Hey, what's up? This is Ekaraj from Back to Godhead, and you're listening to the Coffee and Hardcore podcast. These guys know a ton about hardcore, especially the Hardcore Encyclopedia. But like me, they don't know jack shit about coffee. Except that Jacob guy. He knows his stuff. Alright, guys, you've been warned. Peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everyone, hey, we have made it to season 5, if you can believe that. My name is Mick. I'm here in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and I am joined by the one and only Wiley Willis, all the way from Chicago. It's Coffee and Hardcore Season 5, Episode 1. What's up?
What's up? Damn, that's an intro. Good job.
Can you believe we're here?
Honestly, no.
If you go back and look at when we first started this thing, and now here we are, it's 5 seasons later. We've added 2 other people.
Yeah. If you go back and look behind the scenes, no one would believe that we're actually still here.
No.
So much happens behind the scenes.
Yes.
On everything you do in life.
Yeah, but and how many I try to think back of how many times we're like, should we keep doing this? Should we wait a little bit? What are we doing?
Yeah, well, here's
we are.
Here's something that's gonna catch you off guard. Are we doing a Patreon?
That's what we're supposed to be doing.
That's what we're supposed to be doing. I forgot about it too. Until right now, I threw myself off guard.
It's in the works. You'll see something
It's
where you can do it. Yeah. No, we're excited to do that this year. It's something we're kind of branching into to see what can happen. Kind of get you kind of get the behind the scenes a little bit too.
Right. We just sort of lost contact because of the holidays.
Right. We
haven't been talking as much. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, we did this thing that old people do sometimes when they're like, "Hey,
break a hip."
Not that.
No.
But where we go, hey, I guess I don't need my phone. Because you and I were both like, at one point we're like, you know what? I'm not gonna use my phone today. And then because I didn't hear from you all day, and then the next day you didn't hear from me all day.
Yeah.
We were like, what? And that's what we did. It was actually kind of nice.
It was really nice. So on Christmas, I actually I think we woke up at like 7, got on the phone, said all of our Merry Christmas to family and you guys and friends, godparents, Cox family godparents, and then basically was like shelving my phone from like 8 a.m. on. So it was awesome.
Yeah, wasn't it? It's kind of
I didn't even look at my phone for a whole day. And I think not till like 1 the next day or something like that, noon or 1 or something the next day.
Yeah.
Which that's crazy that's crazy to people.
Right.
Or to us, because it's like that is a real addiction, I guess.
Yeah, and plus, like, if people don't know, and they probably, if they listen enough, they would know that we're all huge hockey fans. So we talk during the NHL season. We probably talk more hockey than we do anything else. And there's like 4 or 5 of us that's in that group, and
yes,
for it not to chirp.
Well, there's no hockey games that day either, though.
I know. So
there was football though. I watched like 3 football games, but
which is cool. That was cool. Little Christmas kind of thing they had going on. So it's awesome.
Probably not cool for the players, but cool for us.
Right, cool for us.
Watch it at home, with a root beer.
Yeah. No. So I feel like we all had a good holiday. Coming back doing this is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Back in the groove.
It's weird because 10 days, I had 10 days off, by the way.
Oh, wow.
That's the most time I've had off in a really long time. And it felt like a really long time, but then it didn't. Like it felt
I
was like 10 days, that's crazy. But then it just seemed like it exploded away. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
It's gone.
Which is good for you to have 10 days off, in my opinion. You work crazy hours.
I do. And it was cool because I was pretty much, unless there was like an important game on, I was pretty much in bed by 10 every night. Which,
how'd that feel?
Amazing.
Yeah.
But it screwed me up this week back because now I don't go to bed till like 2:30, and
right.
So my body at like 10 is like, what are we doing? I thought we were going to bed. I thought we're going to bed.
I remember a time in my life when I was working midnights, and when I would finally try to shift that was bad. And then going back and doing it, you're like, wait, what? So I learned to train myself to go backwards and go like, okay, if I'm going back to work midnights, then I need to do a couple nights. I need to stay up a little later.
Yeah, I should have done that. I think the last night I was like, I should go to bed earlier so I could catch up on some more sleep. So I went to bed at like 9:30.
I was laughing.
Even more in shock.
I was laughing because the other day, I normally can't sleep in. It's hard to sleep in. And the other day I slept to like 8:30, and I was like, holy cow. This is
was that on Christmas?
Yeah.
Or New Year's or yeah.
It was both like Christmas and New Year's, because Christmas, like my kids didn't wake up early at all, which is so weird, dude. When I was like their age, I was chomping at the bit, but they're like sleeping.
I'd wake up at like 4 a.m. and be like, oh, it's not time yet. Okay, I need to try to sleep. I need to try to sleep.
Gosh. But yeah.
Well, it was good. I'm glad we caught up a little bit from our vacation.
Yeah.
Well, we got a good episode for y'all.
Yeah, we do have a really good episode, and it means a lot to us because Crashdog was a big influence in our life. At least somebody that we listened to quite a bit, and Spike was always really cool. He's cool to you and you probably had way more contact with him than I have. But back in the day, early Cornerstone years for Zale, like that, he was really big on helping us out, playing different spots and things. So it's cool to finally get to talk to him like for real.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting because I got saved at 97 Cornerstone. I mean, if you're a listener, you know about this, right? With head noise, right? Yeah. And so I moved to Japuza in 2000. After I graduated, and it was crazy because from 97 to 2000, I was listening to all, the Gurr bands, and then the Tooth and Nail bands, and like Betty Rocket, and 5 Minute Walk and stuff like that. Like, so all those bands, all those Christian bands I loved. And so moving to Japuza, to Jesus People, moving to Chicago in 2000, it's all these bands like Squad 5-0 practiced there a couple times when they were going through on tour. Unwed Sailor, like just so many bands, right? Like Me Without You would stop by. They did a few practices there, and then we watched them at Fireside. They practiced at Japuza on the skate ramp, and then they went and played Fireside, and we all went and watched them. And then even Ludacris, so all these bands, and so it was just so gnarly and weird and surreal to be put into this world of all these musicians that I looked up to and cared about and listened to. And it was bizarre. So, and that's the thing with Spike, is Spike was there. Spike was in Crashdog. I loved Crashdog. And Brian and the Blame, that's when we met and we became friends. And it's just crazy when you are into something like that and you just get thrown into it sort of by accident.
Yeah, it is crazy.
I didn't know all these people lived there. Like, I knew that, they put on Cornerstone, and I didn't know like the correlation that they lived there too. So I remember the first week I was there, I was like, what is this? Is this like a Christian, like superstar resort? Like, why are all these Christian bands here? This is nuts. And come to find out, a lot of them live there.
Right.
Like even the Head Noise guys. That's how I met Sid, and I became friends, and I got saved at a Head Noise concert. It was nuts. So I've known Spike for over, like 24 years now, and Brian, and Sid, and it's just cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
I thought it was really cool.
I think and it's also like, if you've seen pictures of Spike now, his hairs went from this way to now it's gone the opposite direction.
It was a spike on his head, and now it went back to the biggest beard you've ever seen in your life.
Yes. So
yeah, love it.
Good conversation. Good to have him on. Good guy too.
I'm so glad he took the time to chat with us and talk about it. So let's just get into it. Stop blabbering.
I'll stop. Jeez.
No, me. Let's do it. All right. y'all? You just heard Voice of Defiance by Crashdog, and we have a special guest. This is our very first episode of 2024, season 5. We actually made it. That's amazing.
Yes, crazy.
So so we got Spike here. Spike is a mechanic for a missionary group called Jesus People USA, or for those familiar, Japuza, in Uptown, Chicago, Illinois. He's a very good cartoonist for Scattered Thoughts and Red Jaw cartoons. He's a coyote hunter. Also, I want to add a rat hunter. We'll talk about that. He's been on the Jerry Springer show and also on a hunting show that I'm excited to talk about. Most importantly, to the Coffee and Hardcore listeners and to the podcast itself, he's the vocalist for the groundbreaking Christian punk band Crashdog. And we got to get into all of this. This is going to be great because Spike is a great storyteller. And I told him that he needs his own podcast. So everyone should write us and let us know after you hear it if you agree. But I want to talk about everything in the intro. I think maybe we should start at how did you become a mechanic for Japuza and how did you get to Japuza?
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's interesting. Kind of when you asked me about this, I thought, Lord, I'm gonna have to scratch some serious memory here. That's some old history. I feel I'm pretty old going over this kind of stuff. But I came to Chicago when I was 16. I grew up in Colorado, and I was 15, 16 years old. I was in the punk scene. I was a rebellious teenager, and by the time I was 16, I just kind of gave my parents the finger and left home, left school, dropped out of school, and just kind of trying to live the punk, what I thought was the cool punk lifestyle. And ultimately just found myself pretty lonely, pretty depressed, not as cool and fulfilling as I thought it was going to be. And I had a friend of mine who was coming to Chicago to visit the Jesus People for a year, like as a mission stint, and he invited me along just at the last minute, like, hey, you should come join me. And I wasn't a believer at the time. I had no interest in coming and serving Jesus. I just thought it's 3 square meals and a roof over my head and a change of pace. So I jumped on a plane with this guy, and we came to Chicago. And I originally thought it'd only be here for a month, and I'd probably ditch it and go find something else. And this is no joke. A lot of people think this is like just a silly anecdote or whatever. But I was driving in. The guy from Jesus People had picked us up at the airport, and we were driving in the city. I'd never been in a big city before, so I was looking all around, and the guy's like, "Oh, we're only a few blocks away from the building of Jesus People," and I'm looking around. And I see this gorgeous girl walking down the street with a blonde mohawk, and I turned to my friend and said, "Oh, I hope to God that girl is a part of Jesus People," and she was. And it was my future wife. Awesome. And she's 2 years older than me. So I was 16 and she was 18. She didn't want anything to do with me. I was a kid to her, and I was just this. And I again wasn't serving the Lord, so I was totally creeping on her all the time, and she was definitely letting me know that she wasn't interested. And I about a month after being at Jesus People had a life-changing born-again experience, and gave my life to Christ, and basically decided that I was going to start serving them there, and kind of got accepted into this organization. As far as like, that was one of the things I really credit Jesus People at the time, was like not too many people were opening their doors to a 16-year-old runaway who wasn't actually a professing Christian, and was a troublemaker and pretty messed up, lost kid, and they give me a chance, and 38 years later, I'm hoping they didn't regret it, but but again, like this 6-year-old kid, I didn't have a job skill. I didn't have really any, thing to offer Jesus People, and just another person occupying a bed and eating their food. And they tried to see where I could fit in, and I was sweeping and mopping floors, working in the kitchen, and doing odd jobs here and there. And eventually I ran to the 2 of the guys who were running the auto shop at the time, and I just thought they were cool guys. And I asked the leadership team at the time if I could go hang out at the auto shop, and they said sure. And I didn't know anything about cars. I couldn't tell you where a spark plug was in a car, and they just put me to sweeping floors and cleaning tools and made me feel accepted, made me feel part of the crew, even though I didn't know anything. And they just gave me small jobs at first, and then they started slowly teaching me. And really, the number one thing they didn't do is they didn't fire me when I burned the first car to the ground. Like I was,
No
I
way.
had, oh yeah, no, I had discovered this thing in the shop called an acetylene torch. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Like every repair needed a acetylene torch added to the repair, and so I burned all the cars right to the ground. And in any other shop in the United States, they would just go, "Yeah, you're not working here another day," But everyone
Yeah.
was like, "Hey, cool, don't worry about it," and just keep at it, and so eventually, I just started slowly learning things here and there, and trial and error, and hanging out with people who had worked on cars all their life. And so I was just learning by trial and error, and eventually down the road, just on my own volition, I ended up seeking out ASC certification. So I'm an ASC certified auto technician now, and um, it's just something. Really, the truth is, I'm a mechanic by default. I have an aptitude to fixing cars and things that just break, but I'm really more of a left-brained artist type person. But I tell people I'm a artist is stuck in a mechanic's body, and so I do the auto. And again, that's another thing too. Like I only planned on doing the mechanics thing for like a year. I thought I'll give it a try, and 38 years later, I'm still working on all the cars here, and
Yeah, you have your own shop now.
have my own shop. And a few years ago, my wife and I were attending a different church, and my wife made the mistake of telling somebody in the congregation I was a mechanic, and man, I became really popular at the church. I wanted to always be popular as a kid, just not this way, and so it's been a blessing in the sense that it's been a way for me to also help a lot of people. I don't do it on a commercial sense. I work for the G's people as their auto tech, so it's for a nonprofit. But even I get a chance to help people who a lot of times can't afford a mechanic. Um,
Yeah, you should
and
tell
so
that story that you posted on Facebook about getting your decals made. I thought that was an amazing story.
Well, and again, it's one of those things where you don't realize, like, a lot of times you just get so used to doing it, it becomes second nature and something like that. Recently I'm kind of a little bit of a hoarder, and I'm having to move shops. And so I have all these things I'm having to either figure out how to get rid of, and I had this giant piece of quarter-inch plate steel. It's 2 foot by 6 foot long that weighed probably about 300 pounds. And I knew like I got to do something with this uh, piece of plate steel, but I don't want to haul it to my new shop. So right next to my shop is a sheet metal business that's owned and run by G's people, and one of the guys who's the foreman there, he had been through some rough patches in life, and honestly, God, truth is, it's kind of a blur for me, which I guess shows you how much stuff just kind of comes at me, but probably 6, 7 years ago, he was going through some rough times where he didn't know if he'd be able to pay his next rent or whatever. And I knew it was going rough for him, and he'd come and ask me to work on his car. And the truth is, I just helped him out as best I could, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. I just did it. He wasn't a member of our community, so I wasn't technically obligated to work on his car, but I'd try to help him out. And he has kids and stuff. Well, fast forward, a couple weeks ago, I asked him, "Hey, would you be willing to cut up this piece of quarter plate steel? I had it's a skull and cross wrenches design I had done years ago, and I just said, "Hey, could you cut out as many as you can out of this plate steel? It'll be easier for me to transport it, and then I'll have something that I can put on Facebook or eBay to sell later on." But I just didn't want to carry around this giant piece of plate steel, and so I knew it was a favor I was asking him. And so we put it up on this big deck, and he cuts it out on the plasma cutter. And when he's done, I turned to him and said, "Hey, what do I owe you?" And I pulled my wallet out. And I said, "What do I owe you?" And he goes, "You don't owe me nothing, dude. When I was at my lowest moment in my life, and I was eating PBJs and rice, you fixed my car multiple times for nothing, and I'll never forget that. And to be honest, again, like I said, I was shocked because I totally forgot and didn't even think anything about it. But um, and that's blessed me in a way that it's like I feel like in my life I'm happiest when I'm either creating something or I'm helping somebody out, and God's given me that opportunity to do a lot of that in my life, whether it's through my skill of fixing things or creating things, whether it's when I was in the band or doing cartooning. Any I've got more hobbies than people. My wife always gives me a hard time because I go through a new hobby about every 6 months, and she's had the same hobby our entire marriage. She's an avid book reader, and she gets her books from the library.
Yeah.
So, but so and again, that's been one of those things that I've been blessed that I've had the skill that's been given to me through the community, but I can use it to turn around and help people, and it's super rewarding to me when I do have people come back later on and tell me like, "Hey, man, I was in this bad point, and you came out and helped me out," or
Yeah, that's
and
huge.
yeah, and it's I'm the type of person that my entire life I've felt like because when I was younger I didn't feel like I had a job skill. I didn't feel like I belonged. Like, what's my purpose? And suddenly God's like, "Hey, I'm going to give you a purpose, and that's to help other people." And it's in
Yeah.
this way of like, most people in America own a car, so you're gonna, and so there's times where I wish I wasn't as again, like I said, there's times where I wish I wasn't as popular as I am, but I'm learning how to also put up boundaries and things like that. But um, and so basically, yeah, when I first joined G's People, there were 6 mechanics and I think like 30 vehicles, and now we have way more vehicles, and I'm the last mechanic. So the
Yeah.
math doesn't really work.
Wow.
Well, and you
Yeah,
do other like side jobs for people, right?
yeah, and again, like, yeah, I'll people will come to me and actually hire me out to work on their stuff because they're thrilled to find out, hey, there's a guy who's a Christian who is not going to rip them off, and I'll definitely do it at a way cheaper rate than what they would probably get done somewhere else, and I do it honestly. They know they're not getting ripped off, and it's nice to be able to make some side job money. Take my wife on vacation or do a
Yeah.
little trip here, a little hunt trip here or there or whatever. But so like I said, it's to be honest, is if I wanted to, I could move out tomorrow and be making,
Right.
however much an actual auto
Yeah.
tech makes,
Yeah. Yeah. You've
I've
been doing it
never
for a
been
long time.
involved. Yeah, I've never been involved in it for financial gain. So
Yep. It's good.
most of my things, you can look at my life and go, yeah, that guy's obviously not doing it for financial gain because he sucks. But even being in a band, people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're in a band, you're on Jerry Springer, you probably have so much money." Like, no.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
let's get to that. How did Crashdog come about? I'm actually interested in this story because I love Crashdog and I don't know how. I'm guessing through the community, but what's the actual
well,
story?
it is. So we were part of, I'm part of the G's People, and G's People was founded by this band called Resurrection Band, Res Band, and they music is a core central part of Jesus People as far as they had a studio, recording studio, and they have a lot of musicians and a lot of people. And so here we are immersed in this music kind of ministry oriented community. And I can't remember if it was 86 or 87. I went down to Chicago. Had at the time in Chicago there was this thing called the Peace Festival, not at all connected with Jesus People. It was really a secular peace festival down at Montrose Hill, not less than a half mile, 3/4 of a mile from our house. That local bands would come and play, punk bands, hippie bands, and we would go down there as G's People to hand out tracks. Like, that was a big thing at the day. And when I joined G's People, was you go out street witnessing all the time. Like, you go out and hand out tracks to people and talk to people about Jesus.
Yeah,
And
tell the listeners what tracks are. Some might not know.
okay, so yeah, just like a like a sign, like a miniature sign like a folded up piece of paper, and it'd have like a topic and kind of introduce you to our core belief system. And it was just a way to introduce people to a conversation breaker, like, hey, would you take this track about Jesus? And I would make little punk sign ones, and I would hand them out to people. And I was burning up all the Xerox toner at the Jewish people, making these little track signs and stuff, and part of my artistic outlet. But I was really on fire for, I still am, but at the time, it was like really double dipped in, like, I just want to share this experience with everybody else. And so I went down to this Peace Festival, and I'm like, again, 16, 17-year-old kid with a painted leather jacket and my hair up in spikes. And I'll send you some pics if you want. But
Oh yeah, we
they,
do want, yep, for promotion for sure.
yeah. And so then I'm down there, and every time there was a band switch, where they're tearing down and switching between bands, somebody would get up and share their message, whether it was the Buddhists were getting up, or like people for the legalization of marijuana, um, any type of like real fringe philosophies, or whatever they were getting up and sharing. And as a 17-year-old kid, it suddenly hit me like, this is my opportunity. So I went over to the stage manager and I said, can I get signed up on the list to talk about peace? I've got a message about peace. And he's looking at me and going, yeah, it's just punk kid,
Yeah.
painted leather jacket. If I had told him, hey, I'm a born again Christian, I want to talk about peace, he'd have been like, get lost. So I waited, I don't know how many bands I waited for until I finally, okay, you're up. And I get up on the stage, and it's in front of probably 300, hippies, punks, burnouts, just there's the dregs of Chicago, and I get up and I off the cuff sharing about the difference between temporal peace and eternal peace. And then I just talk about temporal peace is like you got your weed and your girlfriend and your record. But what happens when your girl dumps you? You get busted for weed and your record gets a scratch on it. It's like that's temporal peace. And everyone in the crowd is like, yeah, man, yeah. And it's like, but I want to tell you about eternal peace. The peace that doesn't matter when your girl dumps you and your record gets scratched and you get busted by the cops. And the only way you can get that eternal peace, and everyone's on board with me up to this point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the only way you can get that eternal peace is by giving your life to Jesus Christ. And I mean, beer bottles getting whipped at me, spit on, cussed at. And I even said at the thing at the time, I was like, am I at a peace rally? Because it turned so volatile. I mean, these people were screaming and yelling at me, and I didn't get angry or upset, but I just kind of laughed and I said, hey, thank you for your time. Just want to let you know Jesus loves you, and I hope you guys really think about that. And so I walked home and was wiping the spit off and the beer, and as a young Christian, I said, well, that was a waste. That was a failure. And a year later, 1 year later, this guy joins the Jesus people, and one of our pastors was asking him, well, how did you come to know Jesus? And he says, well, I was at this peace festival, and this little kid got up with spikes up on his hair, and he talked about Jesus. And at the time, I just thought it was a joke. But that night, I went home, and in my basement, I got on my knees and I prayed and gave my life to Jesus. And so, it's pretty powerful for me to see, that, it took a year, but, seeing that, the scripture, we're, our job is just to plant the seed. Somebody else is going to water it. God's going to make it grow. You just have to be faithful. And, but when I was walking home that night, it hit me. I said, thought to myself, if I was in a band, I'd have a whole set. I'd have 45 minutes to share about the peace of Jesus Christ instead of just a 5-minute spiel.
Yeah.
So I came home and I talked to a couple of the pastors at Jesus people at the time and just said, hey, I'd really like to think about starting to start a band. And they were like, well, do you know how to play any music? I said, I don't know nothing. I don't know. I'm the most musically non-talented person you'll ever meet. I mean, you will probably not interview anyone else as more musically untalented as I am. But I just had the determination that the reason why I wanted to get a band together was so I could share the hope and love of Jesus Christ to people. And so there was the word kind of spread around Jesus people, and there was a couple guys about my age who were like, hey, I'll help you out. we were all young guys who were literally barely knew how to play the instruments we were using, but and we all came from 4 different musical backgrounds. Most guys who get into bands, correct me if I'm wrong, but most guys who get into bands generally have a genre they've all
Oh
been
yeah,
following.
I would
Yeah.
say so. Yeah.
And it was a curse and a blessing for us as Crashdog because, first of all, we couldn't even agree on what 4/4 time was. Literally, there'd be almost fist fights in the studio. Like this is 4/4 time. You know, people be fighting and yelling, and I don't even know what 4/4 time is as the singer. You know, but a lot of arguments about the technical side of music. But one of the blessings about that was at the time when Crashdog was kind of getting its feet under ourselves was you could hear other bands that you knew exactly at the albums that everyone in the band was listening to. They were so cookie cutter to other bands they were listening to.
Yeah.
We had so many bizarre background influences that we couldn't even agree on what we wanted to sound like. We couldn't agree on what we were going to name our band. There was almost fist fights over what we're going to call it. It got called Crash Dog because our guitar player's 6-year-old son decided that's what we needed to call our band, and that is literally the only way we ever got the name Crash Dog was because a 6-year-old kid gave it to us.
That's the best.
That's awesome.
That's
yeah.
the best.
But we like you couldn't find 4 guys who, I mean, we'd fight and argue and yell about things all the time, and it's a miracle that no one got their teeth bust out. And but I think it helped also in our sound because we were unique enough that I think we weren't trying to follow what the trend was. You know, that was a time in music when a lot of bands are going from hardcore to thrash.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something that I'm not saying that I don't respect it. It just wasn't. These were all people who could play us under the ground technically. That just wasn't our style. It wasn't something I vibed with as far as music style. Technically, most of those bands could destroy us. But it just as a sound wise, I was looking way more towards like I personally liked early hardcore and late 70s punk more feel. And I but again, it just like the fact that we could actually produce one album was a miracle in itself because we just argued and fought and um literally I wish I would have videotaped a recording studio when they
How
would
many were
record us in
you
the
on?
studio.
Three of the records?
Yeah, so I was in Humane Society, Pursuit of Happiness, and Mud Angels, and we actually put out a little cassette tape before that. I forgot what the name of that was called, but
You did the Finch Pinch, or was that later?
no, I didn't do Finch Pinch.
Oh,
And
you
one of the
didn't?
funniest, no, I left at Mud Angels. Right, the tour that supported Mud Angels in '94 is when I left the band.
And then
But
Andrew took over.
yeah, so our guitar player at the time, Andrew, when I was leaving, everyone, and the thing about when I was leaving the band, um, I'm jumping in, in chronological order here,
Right.
but
Sorry.
jumping ahead. No, it's fine. But when I chose to leave the band, it was right when Crash Dog was really starting to get itself going, and everyone was looking at me like you are an absolute freaking idiot. The band was upset with me. People in my church here were like, "You're out of your ever loving mind, dude. Like this is the biggest opportunity you're gonna have in your life." And I mean, I had a pastor who told me, like, you will regret this for the rest of your life. You're going to regret this every day the rest of your life that you left this band. And this is going to be the biggest thing that you're going to look back and go, I wish I would have stayed in there, blah, blah. And to be honest, almost 30 years later, not a day's gone by where I've been so thankful I made the decision that I left the band. And I look back and go, it's actually one of the best decisions I made, and not saying that to trash people in bands or other people's decisions, but for myself personally, I have a running joke about that, and my wife always gets really annoyed with me when I tell it. But one of the reasons why I left the band was the number one reason why I left the band was we were on tour and '94, and we'd spent a significant time away from our families and our support group, and I just woke up in the middle of tour thinking, I stood up in front of a church to make a commitment to a woman. I never stood up in front of a church to make a commitment to this band, and I had met a large enough group of guys that had been in bands for way longer than I had that had really caused a lot of stress in their marriage.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not saying this to sound judgmental towards anybody else. I just, for myself, was like, that's not what I want to have. And one of the key things, my wife and I used to head up marriage counseling, like pre-marriage counseling at Jesus People. We used to do a lot of pre-marriage counseling for people, and I would tell these young men, it's like every woman needs two things in life. They need trust and honor. They need to know that they can trust you, and they also need to know that they're number one in your life. And when you give that to them, they will your marriage will flourish. And I would tell people, man, when I left the band and my wife knew it was because I was putting her first, the sex was so good. If I had known, it, if I had known it was going to be that good, I'd have left 5 years earlier. I mean, it was like, dang. And so I word of advice to any young men in bands, but yeah, um, but again, back chronologically going backwards here because I jumped way ahead there, but
That was my fault.
no, it's fine. We fought and argued, and we put out an album. And the great thing about being a part of the Jesus People is that it was very supportive of what we were doing.
Yeah, because they recorded. You were on GUR, right? And they recorded all the records and all that.
Yeah, so we were on their GUR record label, and they really like, hey, this is something we want to push and promote. And I mean, we still all had our regular day jobs. It wasn't like we were sitting on whatever. I mean, we would work all day and come home and practice and record and write in the evenings, and just like every other band, it wasn't like they gave us days off or
Yeah.
but we also had the opportunity to go to use their equipment, and so just again, for me, my main goal in Crashdog was I wanted to share the gospel with people. And the funny thing was, when somebody had mentioned this thing to me, and it was completely by accident, but it wasn't anything we had tried to do, or I hadn't tried to do intentionally. It was, if you look at a lot of Crashdog songs, just based on the song, it's not real straightforward gospel. It's addressing a lot of issues, social issues, a lot of things that we felt like a lot of Christians weren't addressing at the time. And not, again, for me, I'm not saying that to sound judgmental, like we were so much better than everybody else. I said that's what we felt led. Like Jesus would like us to talk about the poor. Jesus would like us to talk about injustices in this country. Um, Jesus would like us to talk about these different social issues that we need to address. But when I would do live shows, I had no problem talking about the Lord and about Jesus, and um, it wasn't like we were trying to sneak. It's just when we would sit down to write, these were things that kind of came up, and we talk about. And Andrew was a lot more socially conscious than I was.
And for the listeners, Andrew also went on to do Ballydows.
Yeah, and so they there was always kind of a tug of war, and not in a negative way. Andrew and I worked pretty good together, where Andrew would always kind of encourage me to he would challenge me to rethink a song I'd written, and like, how can we change this a little bit, or how can we address this issue, or and I appreciated that, always that kind of nudge, because to be honest, to this day I still um kind of hear his voice, even though I'm not writing music. I might be drawing a cartoon, or I might be doing something else, and he's one of those people kind of sitting on my shoulder thinking like, what would make this better? How could you kind of challenge, whatever? And um, so, and then you kind of blink and you do a second album. And I think it was on our second album, our Good Records got a phone call from Jerry Springer show,
Yes.
and they it was 92, and Jerry Springer at the time wasn't the notorious crazy, he didn't have like skinhead lesbians finding out who their
Yeah.
pregnancy was, whatever. He was still trying to be a little bit more mainstream, but it's a popular show, and they said, "Oh, we're going to do a show about alternative methods of sharing the gospel." And they wanted Crashdog. They had a bunch of different people on there,
They
and
had
so they
the Jesus biker guy, right?
yeah, they had the Jesus biker guy,
And then the
and then
lady who wrote the Bible that was what
Street
was
Slang,
Street Slang. Yep.
and met her, wonderful lady, like just really sweet sister in Christ, and then they had us come down. I think we actually caught the L train down there because it was just downtown. It wasn't like we had
Yeah.
to. And then I'm just clueless. I just showed up, and they originally and they had lied to me. They had said, "I'm shocked. I know everyone on the show is going to be shocked that the Jerry Springer show lied to you," but they lied to me and said that I would only perform a song. That's all we would be doing, and I was totally cool with that. But then they were like, "Oh no," they were miking me up for a um like a mini mic, and I was
Yeah.
told the lady, tech lady, I was like, "No, I'm just going to sing into my microphone." She goes, "Oh no, you're going to be on a panel. I'm finding this out like 10 minutes before I'm going on the show." And I mean, I'm like 21, and I mean, if anyone who knows me, I can put my foot in my mouth so fast, and if I don't have a script, it's like,
Is that
oh
why
my,
Tom Crozier or not? But who was it that Tom Cameron came on?
yeah. Tom Cameron came on
Yeah.
as the representative, and so
Yeah.
I was
That
just
probably
hoping
helped a little bit.
yeah, and I was hoping he'd do most of the talking, but Jerry kept asking me questions, and one of the things that's really kind of funny, and most people probably edited it out, or it didn't seem as big a deal when you watch it on TV as when it was in real life. But I can't remember a song I wrote to recite a song.
I
If
remember that.
somebody asked me about the middle verse, I have to start at the very beginning. I
Yeah.
can't.
I'm that same exact way.
Yeah, it's how people's minds are written or wired. But Jerry asked me, like, "Tell me the last three lines on that one song," and I literally like national television, like,
Yeah. It wasn't. I didn't think it
and
was that bad though.
yeah, well, and somehow, miracle of God, I remember the line. But what they also didn't tell us was that they're going to have in the audience a very religious
Oh,
group of Baptists that were going to try to antagonize us and try to stir the
Yeah.
pot.
He was pretty bad.
Well, and the funny thing was it didn't work because they were hoping that we'd get upset and it turned into like a
Right. Like a
no
Jerry
one
Springer
on
show.
no one on the show told me like we want you to cuss this guy out. No one said anything like that, but you could see that they were trying to stir up some drama. And we didn't take the bait. We were just like, God bless you. You have a different way of thinking about it. We hope the best for you. Like, this guy's very misguided pastor, very angry, very judgmental. And the funny thing was, which they don't show you on the show, when we were done with everything as they're shutting stuff down, about 10 of people from his congregation came up to us and said, we just want to say thank you so much for what a witness you were.
that's awesome.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so like again, it's like we're on national TV. We're not going to sit there and scream and yell at you, and like that would be
Well, you wouldn't do that
so impressive.
anyways.
Well, there's some people who pushed me to it at G's people, but thank God I wasn't on national television. But there's some people at G's people will tell you different. But they but and so for me it was one of those things where again we did this thing, like didn't think much about it, but you'd be at like I was at like I don't know I'm trying to think of like a Huddle House or some white trash restaurant down south, like 6 months later, and this lady walks up to me. She's like, "I seen you on the Jerry Springer show," and it's just like it's kind of hilarious, like
Yeah, because you were
And
very recognizable back then too. I mean, you are
yeah,
now, but
Yeah, but and so for me, I was excited that, like, there's no regrets. I mean, I think most people would look and go, "Oh my God, I was on the Jerry Springer show because I, found out my boyfriend was cheating on me." And I can
Yeah.
look back, honestly, 30 years later and go, I'm really proud of the fact that there's nothing I regret. I don't regret about getting up and sharing the hope of Jesus Christ and being kind to broken people.
Yeah, I thought it was a great
And
episode.
well, thank you. And so then we came out, and again, we're just grinding away and doing this, and I had no idea, I guess, again, because my main intention was I'm not a musician, and I really never wanted to be in the band to be in a band. Like, I'm just not. That's not. I'd be a liar to say, like, I'm not saying I was faking it. I really wanted to try to be the best I could be at it, but it I think there's some people it just comes naturally to them who they are, and they'll be doing that till the day they die, and God bless them. That's awesome, man. More power to you. For me, I felt like I was a fish out of water most of the time because my main intention was I really just wanted to meet people and share God's love with them. And another thing that kind of, like, I had another poignant moment. I mean, there's tons of crazy moments that happened in those years that I was in the band. Uh, but I had this thing that happened to me that I have carried on to this day, and it was one of the festivals. And again, like I said, we were pretty outspoken about, like, social change and all these different things. We're kind of, and I look back now at some of these lyrics I wrote, and I thought, man, for being an 18-year-old kid, I sure knew a whole lot about the world. I mean, I was some smart kid. Now there's a lot of things I don't, on a social level, may not agree with. You know what I mean? Or I may have a different view slightly, or maybe a more broader view.
So you're saying
um
from when you were a kid to now, your views have changed a little bit from the lyrics you wrote in the band?
Well, yeah, I mean, my worldview has changed because my worldview is
Yeah.
broadened. I mean, when I was
Right.
17, I
Yeah,
thought
I would hope so.
I
Yeah.
had it all figured out. I mean,
Right.
who are the bad people, and here's who are the good people, and so,
It's not that
and
cut and
that even
dry.
no, and that even caused conflict of us internally in the band because um, there was people who had very strong political viewpoints that I just didn't agree with. And of course, we're only one band, and there's only one album, and there's only going to be one track, and it's like, and that caused some conflict because I was like, yeah, I don't track with that, or I don't vibe with that notion. And it is a slippery slope. I'm just be honest with you, is there's a very slippery slope that I have watched in my life, working at Cheese People, and when I was in Crashdog, is C.S. Lewis talks about people attaching politics to Christianity, and he says it pretty strongly. Like, he says it's not going to work. Um, but to me, at some point in time, it's very difficult to juggle the hope of the Christian message if you're also hyper focusing on political issues at the same time. And 38 years of being a Christian, I've seen way too many people who've, uh, at one point or another, are going to get absorbed by the political movement more than they are their faith in Christ. You know what I'm saying?
I
At
do know
some
what you're
point in
saying.
time, and
Mick knows what you're saying more than I do. Mick
I'm
dealt
not
with all
saying that to
that.
sound super judgmental, but what I'm saying is for me, if the message I want to believe in is that even if I don't agree with you politically, I can still love. I'm actually still required to love you, whether I want to or not. Uh, but when you hyper focus, politics are designed to divide and separate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Christianity, and when I say Christianity, Jesus Christ is believing in Jesus is to bring us together. And I can sit at a table with people who have very different worldviews, very different political views, different social views. And if we're deciding that, before Christ, those things are not important, we're going to love him first, and then we're going to work together to try to further his kingdom. That to me is what the body of Christ is. But I've had so many people, long-term friends of mine here at Jews People, who have felt justified in saying some pretty ugly things to me because of a political reason. And I'm like, wow, you what? Like, and so even if you follow my cartoons,
Yes,
you'll see that I address that a lot.
you
It
do.
really,
Yep.
I try to show people that it's pretty futile to put your hope. I mean, human nature doesn't change. Um, 2,000 years ago, people were really wanting a Messiah that was going to be a political answer to the Roman occupation, and they were very disappointed with Jesus Christ. So much they nailed him to the cross. And so I think that to this day, we're still looking for those answers where it's like, I want a Jesus, or I want a church that's going to go in and kick this other church's butt, or this other political, and now you have a Christian nation that's supposedly a Christian nation that's divided between the ultra right wing Christians and the progressive Christians. And as a guy in the middle, I'm looking at both of them and going, you really actually aren't that far apart from each other, because your answer to anything that you disagree with is vitriol and shame. And I mean, the people that have come against me through my cartooning on social media, Christians who have said things, it's just like, holy smokes, and so just because I disagree with them about something. So with Crashdog, that was like my main thing, was like, we were trying to bring attention to these things, but I back to my main point was, I had a person backstage at a festival. I can't remember what Cornerstone festival it was. It had to be like 93 or 92. Backstage after a show, and all these young people were asking me questions about certain things, my opinions on certain issues. And this young woman, I don't know who, I never seen her since, don't know who she was, but if I could ever meet her again, I'd tell her what influences her comment made. She asked me in the middle of all this stuff, she goes, "But what are you doing about it?"
Oh,
Getting in a band and singing about it. And she's like, "No, no, no. But what are you doing about it?" And it really struck home to me that you can get up and sing songs about our unjust world, but unless you're actually feeding the poor, visiting the people in prison, I'm saying, like, doing, um, it's not, it's clanging cymbals. It's just noise. And she wasn't, I didn't get a vibe from this girl. She was there to judge me or make me feel like crap or whatever. But it really was a lightning bolt moment in my life of thinking, yeah, I can get up on stage and just sit there and tell people all day long, like, this is what we need to be doing for the kingdom, blah, blah. But, what am I specifically doing in my life? And that's a challenge again. She's another person that's sitting in my back behind me, kind of remind me, but what are you doing about it? And
that's great. It still
so,
sticks with you. That's crazy.
yeah, and it's a positive thing. It's not a condemning. It's not anger. It's
Right.
not obsession. It's and, Bible says, faith without works is dead. So for me, it's like trying to live out that gospel. Um, and it's interesting in that, because I don't try to do it in a way of like. I think a lot of times people get hung up in the fact that, like, oh, I got to do that so I can earn respect from other people or earn love from God. And honest God truth is, I've just been waking up every day and like, what do you got on the plate, Lord? So I kind of catching up to chronologically. 94, I leave the band. Um, Decide that I'm, really going to put my marriage first, and right around that same time, I had decided to start a boys program in a homeless shelter that we run. Jesus People runs a homeless shelter. Um, just out of nowhere, decided, I'm gonna run an after school boys program. And so between 6-year-old and 12-year-old boys in a shelter could come to this program we did. And I had other volunteers. We helped out. We got the kids involved with activities and just trying to make these kids feel good. And one of the things we did was, if it was a boy's birthday, who was living in the shelter, we would buy a cake and get presents and make this kid feel like he was king for the day. And there was kids in the shelter who had never had a birthday this good and knew they probably weren't ever going to have a birthday this good once they moved out. And there was kids who were moving out of our shelter who were upset, which is really crazy. You'd think a kid would be upset he's moving out of shelter, but because they knew their birthday was coming up in a month,
No.
and they weren't going to get that birthday that Spike and his wife were going to give them. And so I never particularly singled out a certain kid, but there was kids who really into this program, really wanted to connect with my wife and I. There's this one kid, young kid named Bobby, and he at the time he was 6. He just thought my wife and I were the greatest in the world, and we were friendly with him and stuff, but we never really did anything with him outside the shelter or program. But his family eventually, his mom and 3 sisters moved out of our shelter, and this is back in the day. This again, I'm gonna have to make a reference point here. This is the day before cell phones and social media. So when people moved out of our shelter, we lost contact with them.
Yeah.
I didn't have any way to keep in touch with these people. And 3 months after Bobby's family moved out, one day somebody's like, "Hey, Spike, someone's on the phone for you." So I walk down the hallway, pick up the phone, and it's Bobby.
That's amazing.
He's like, "Hey, Spike, you know what yesterday was?" And I was like, "No, Bobby, what was yesterday?" He goes, "It was my birthday." And I could tell he was reaching out to me.
Yeah.
And I had no obligation to him other than just to say, "Well, happy birthday." He wasn't in our shelter anymore. And I could have tried to explain it to a 7-year-old kid, but that's not what he was calling for.
Right.
And so I lied to him. I just said, "Well, Bobby, we knew that. And we have a cake and we have presents waiting for you. We just don't know where you live." And I could hear him yelling on the phone to his siblings, "I knew it. I told you. I told you." And so I was like, "Bobby, what's your address?" So he gives us our address. I said, "We're coming home. We're coming down there tonight." And so I turned to Amy and said, "I don't know what you got planned for tonight, but we're going to the South Side." And we stopped at Jewel and Toys R Us and loaded up. And
That's
that
amazing.
started that started this ball rolling with him where it was like, okay, for Christmas we went down, and then we picked him up for some other things, and then eventually I got him involved in the Boy Scout troop, and then eventually I got involved with his Boy Scout troop. So I was driving back and forth to the South Side every weekend, making sure he went to Boy Scouts, and eventually his neighborhood got so violent. His mom and I started talking, and she asked if I could have him come live with us on the north side of the G's people. And so he moved in with my wife and I, and we co-raised him with his mom. We'd bring him home on the weekends, and he was the closest thing I'll ever have to having a son. We never put a title on that. We just him and I were just friends, so it was never dad son kind of thing. I never called him my son because I didn't want him to feel this weird pressure, and vice versa. But he eventually graduated from our school, and then he went out to, ironically, gets a job less than 20 minutes away from where I grew up in Colorado.
In Colorado, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Then he gets a scholarship to play rugby for Wyoming University. He gets a business degree, and now he's got a fiance and our first granddaughter. And
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook. That's
awesome.
amazing.
yeah, so he's living this successful dream out in Wyoming, and his mom on a regular basis will let me know, let us both know, my wife and I, how much we saved his child, saved her child. And a lot of the kids who grew up in that neighborhood aren't doing as well as Bobby is, and so, when that girl said, "Well, what are you doing about it?"
Yeah.
there is a point where I can say, well, and I wasn't doing any of that out of the sense of I gotta look good or I gotta somehow get this lady to shut up in my brain. But I did it because there was an opportunity in front of me to choose to do the right thing or to do just to blow this kid off. And it grew into this thing where basically now we have this thing that we're very proud of, and we're very proud of Bobby and the decisions he's made. And now we have a little granddaughter we can hold and hug.
No.
And so that's a huge part of our life, in the sense of living out that gospel of reaching out to somebody who, Bobby was a kid at risk. He's a young man without a father. And in Chicago, that's bad news, easy way to get involved in gangs and bad things. And
Yeah.
so, and then, eventually, and of course, again, just there's just so many crazy things that happen in my life on a regular basis. I kind of started it's this crazy adventure. Like every week, I think, what's the next thing the Lord's gonna have me get involved in? But our organization, Cheese People, owned the property that we put Cornerstone Music Festival on, which is about 600 to 800 acres of amazing property in West Central Illinois. So there was lots of hunting and fishing opportunities when the festival wasn't going on. So my wife and I had a little trailer down there, and we go down on the weekends. And I also took Bobby down there. Like Bobby grew up and going down in rural
In Bushnell, right?
Illinois. Yeah, Bushnell.
Yeah.
And they got him into hunting and into fishing. I got him. That's where I did all my hunting and fishing for years. And around 2005 or so, I went through a pretty life transforming moment in my life. And it's way too long to explain on this podcast, but basically, I think most people in their Christian walk go through a moment where they have a very severe conflict with either spiritual leadership or somebody in the church that causes them to rethink about everything it's almost like I don't know if the word cognitive shift or whatever you call it, but a big and a lot of people end up actually just falling away from the Lord. Like there's a lot of people who, if you have a huge run-in with somebody who's in spiritual leadership, it's very hard to discern your Christian walk in that arena, and so I've met so many people who've just walked away from Christianity, and it's really unfortunate. But that point, I was thankful that I already had such a wonderful, deep relationship with God that it was never even a question in my life whether I was going to keep following Jesus. It was just suddenly I had to reframe and rethink: if my pastors are wrong about this, what else are they wrong about? And I just literally started thinking about whoa, and then it started making me think about uh, all the things I've ever been taught and raised in from when I was a child about the Bible and about Christianity, and all this stuff is tons of material for cartooning. And I've
Mm.
drawn cartoons since I was a little kid. I've drawn doodles, what I would call doodles. But to actually draw a single panel cartoon that is a joke is called a gag cartoon. And so I started drawing gag cartoons almost as a therapeutic catharsis for this painful issue I was going through in our community.
You said this was
Um,
2005?
yeah, it's around 2005, and I just started drawing random cartoons. And a buddy of mine who's a professional cartoonist who used to live at G's People years ago, Kevin Franks, he was like, I sent something to him just to show him what I was doing. He's like, man, you need to submit some of this stuff to Christianity Today. And at the time, Christianity Today magazine was the largest Christian magazine in America. It was print magazine. And I told him right off the bat, I already have enough rejection in my life. I don't need any more. I don't really need people I don't know telling me I suck. I've already got people I do know telling me. But so so I he kept bugging me about it. So I sent in a couple cartoons, and right off the bat they bought a couple from me. And
Wow.
I got it way too easy early because they loved a few of my first cartoons, but then trying to convince them to buy more down the road was a lot more difficult. But it was like such a boost for me. Like, oh my gosh, like that was a childhood dream for me because I loved cartoons ever since I was a little kid. Like opening up
Yeah.
the paper, seeing cartoons, and thinking one day maybe I might have a cartoon published. And I remember when that magazine came out. I mean, I went down and bought every issue out of the local Christian bookstore, and sending them to all my relatives and like, look at
Yeah.
me, I made it in the magazine, and
That's huge. That's huge, though.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it was just like the same feel as when the record first came out,
Yeah.
like your first record, and so um and then I was drawing faith-based cartoons, but again, a lot of the stuff was just kind of helping me in a way of rethinking, challenging some of the viewpoints I'd been raised to think about, and trying to do it in a little bit of a humorous tone. Um, and then I was also doing a lot of hunting at the time, and so I sent two coyote hunting. I'm really big into hunting coyotes. I sent two to the largest coyote hunting magazine in America. Predator Extreme is the name of the magazine, and I just randomly sent them to the editor, and he wrote me back and said, "I love these. Can you supply us with enough for a year?"
Wow.
And I mean, I only drew 2, and that's all I had. And I again lied to the guy and said, "Sure, totally." And I sat there with a blank piece of paper trying to figure out how I was going to come up with 6 more cartoons, you know. But and I got lucky with that guy because that editor, his name's Marcolis. He's literally one of the nicest editors, nicest guys you'll ever meet. He's done more to help me promote my career as far as a cartoonist and a writer. He's the first person to ever encourage me to write. I was like, dude, I can't string a paragraph together without like 16 misspellings and punctuation, you know, whatever screw ups. And even my wife
Yeah.
was like, when this guy was encouraging me to write, I was like, really? Like, have you seen? Like my husband, like I'm like borderline illiterate, you know. My wife taught high school English for 18 years, so I talk about opposites attracting, you know. So my first article I ever wrote for a magazine had to have 7 rewrites because my wife is very fussy about everything with
Oh, so
like,
she was like your editor before you turned it in.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
I've got the
that's a good idea.
greatest. I mean, not only is the loving great, but the editing is perfect too. You know, so it's like I got the whole package, you know. But they and even with my cartooning, like I'll draw a cartoon and you know, my wife was like, "Hey, you spelled cat wrong again," but you know, CAT. But you know, and I just started growing. And what was bizarre, and this is a funny twist in my life journey, is like suddenly I'm getting hunting cartoons published in magazines all over the country, different whitetail deer hunting magazines, hog hunting magazines, and people are eating this stuff up because in the hunting world, there's just not too most. My cartoonist friend, my professional cartoonist friend, said you have an inside advantage that most people don't, and that is you actually hunt. Because most people who draw hunting cartoons, you know, they're not a hunter because they just it's you can tell.
Really, you
And
think you would
so
need to be, right?
you'd think, but
Yeah.
so these people instantly knew. I mean, rural people all over North America were like, "This dude gets us. He gets the hunting jokes. This is written by a hunter."
Mhm.
And suddenly, like, and of course, this is right around the same time I'm starting to do Facebook, posting stuff on Facebook. Suddenly, I'm getting all these invites and friend requests, and people are blown away by these cartoons. And then they're like, "Wait a second, you're from Chicago?" Like they can't.
Yeah,
To this day, people cannot connect that reality. Like, wait, you just drew a really funny cartoon about hunting white-tailed deer,
and you live in
but
a
you
city.
live in the
Yeah.
inner city of Chicago, and then you're a part of this religious organ. Like they just the mind blowing. They just their heads are exploding. You know.
Well, Spike, let me
So
let me ask you this question just real quick, because
yeah,
scattered thoughts cartoons is like your religious ones and just stuff about
no,
daily. No?
Scattered Thoughts cartoons is all my hunting and fishing
Oh, that's
cartoons.
your hunting one. So what's
Yeah.
Red Jaw then?
Red Jaw cartoons is all my faith based, and then
Okay,
just
I had it backwards.
not
Okay.
anything else like that. No, that's fine. I'm dyslexic too, so you know
Well,
they.
I have both
Yeah.
of your books actually at work,
Oh well, thank you, man. I'm
and
honored.
was looking through them, and I must have just.
No, yeah, it's happened. And I mix things up sometimes too. Like sometimes I'll cross certain things, and you know, like I had a cartoon, and that's another thing too. Like people in the rural settings seeing stuff drawn about hunting, and then throwing a little bit of faith stuff in. You know, when you shoot an animal, sometimes they run off, and you got to go find this animal. And there's this thing called blood trailing. So you're trying to find the blood trail. And anyone who's ever hunted seriously for white-tailed deer, wild pigs, coyotes, and things like that, you better get good at blood trailing. It can be very tedious and difficult. And uh, so I drew a cartoon, and this was a serious cartoon. It wasn't a ha ha cartoon. It was more of a serious thing. But one Easter, I drew a cartoon where you see the hillside with a trail of blood going up to the 3 crosses, and it just says this hunter follows the ultimate blood trail. And I've had that shared countless times by people all over the world, because you're a hunter and you're faith based, then you get that concept. But they I had another one too. Like I drew one, a silly one, where it's two guys out in the woods, and the one guy's like, after spending all this money and time on hunting, I have to ask myself, what would Jesus do? And the other guy says he wouldn't miss. And it's a joke. If Jesus had put all that time and money into it, he's gonna make sure the animal's dead. But they, and it's like one of the greatest blessings, and it was one of the original intentions for me with Crashdog was with cartooning is I'm not making, and I've never had the fantasy of making a ton of money off cartooning, but it has opened up so many doors to meet so many people in realms I would never have a chance to connect with. I mean, I have friends of mine deep south, backwoods, redneck, hardcore. They don't even like people outside their county who like my cartoons, have invited me to come down and hunt with them, and made long-lasting friendships with these people. And they have told me openly, if you'd have told me 10 years ago I was going to be friends with some guy from Chicago, I'd be like, hell no. But, you make somebody laugh and it opens a door.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a situation right now where a friendship I met, and it's a bizarre connection, but there's a woman I'm friends with through Instagram. She's an artist. I'm an artist. She's Native American. She definitely and understandably has apprehensions towards Christianity.
Oh yeah,
Of
course.
Not a big fan. Not a big fan of white people. She likes my cartoons. And we connected, and we've maintained a friendship for 3 years now. And it shows you that, to me, it's the opposite of politics. If her and I were holding to our true politics, we would never even talk to each other.
Yeah.
But because we can laugh at certain things together, and we found the things that we can enjoy and chuckle about, and because we've been intentionally chose to respect each other's viewpoints, we've maintained this friendship that most of the people don't understand how that works. Because what the world wants is they want you to make sure, like, well, let me just tell you how I'm right and you're wrong. And she's never got on my page and told me, if I know I've drawn cartoons that she probably didn't like, and she's never got on there to tell me how bad I am or messed up I am. And vice versa. There's things that she posts on her social media that I'm like, oh, cringy at, but I'm like, I'm not her life coach.
Yeah.
Right.
I drew a cartoon a while back, and it said, it's just a cartoon of me, and then it just has a little saying above it. It says, it's not my job to change people's minds, it's my job to love people. And I can't remember exactly how it says, but it's something like, and pray that the Holy Spirit, or it's the Holy Spirit's job to change people. It's not my job. And right now he has his hands pretty full with me. And, it's just the idea that walking in that humility of going, even though I'm born again Christian and I believe I serve the one and only true God, I am, I need, it's not my job to force people to believe my religion. It's my job to just hopefully have a good example of love and understanding. And I'll tell you an interesting story about this woman. She prays. Is it my job to make sure she prays to exactly the person I pray to? Because I believe there's only one God.
No, it's not.
But that doesn't mean it's not. But I'm saying is, like, even my worldview through the years has changed to the point where I don't doubt that she's praying to the same God I'm praying to, but she's praying the way she was raised.
Yeah.
So about 3 years ago or 2 years ago, when
I like that
my wife and I got, and these are things that, as I'm growing as a Christian, I'm always continually challenging what I've been thinking, what I've believed, and how does this resonate with Scripture. But about 2-3 years ago, whenever everyone was getting COVID, my wife and I got COVID, and we got sick. And my wife's annoying because my wife has one of the greatest immune systems in the world. She was sick one day.
No
She got
way.
COVID. She was cleaning the house. She was literally cleaning the house with COVID.
I got hit so hard with it.
Oh, dude, I was like, I felt like I had a bad flu, but I was like, I can't even barely get to the toilet to take go to the bathroom, let alone my wife's over there sleeping and dusting things. But I had mentioned to my friend to her that, oh, my Amy are down sick with the COVID. And she says, well, I'm going to do a prayer dance for you tonight. And I was like, what? I didn't know what that was. And she explained to me that in her tribe, they have this dance they do when they pray for people who are sick. It is very intentional. You have to, as Christians, we go, hey, man, I'll be praying for you.
Yeah. And
She
you
has
have to
to
wonder if sometimes people really do even.
Oh, yeah. How sincere is that?
Yeah.
She had to put on an actual specific outfit.
Wow.
She has to actually do a specific type of dance. And she's doing that thinking about my wife and I, totally two strangers who.
That's really cool.
And it brought
That's
me
love
to
right
tears.
there.
It brought me to tears thinking about that somebody was willing to do that for me. So I drew her a cartoon. Of course, again, it's one of those things like my cartoon just becomes a journal of my daily life. But I drew a cartoon of her in the foreground dancing in her specific outfit that she's wearing, in the specific way she's dancing. And then I'm in the background with the little Presbyterian prayer, hands clasped together, looking seriously lame. And the caption says, "When that moment you realize your friend has a cooler prayer life than you." And when I sent her, I think she was legitimately shocked because she's not used to having Christians tell her that her prayer life is legit. You know what I mean? We're so used to the Christian realm. Well, unless you say Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
What? So the cartooning thing has been this thing. It's been this bizarre world where I literally am like connecting with people everywhere from like these super deep South rednecks who would never think that they would ever be friends with this like guy from Chicago to people who are adamantly against Christianity. But I have atheists and different people reach out to me and go, wow, I never, because I'm challenging my own world belief and my own faith belief. I've had Christians, I'm like, oh, you should draw cartoons about atheists. I'm like, oh, I'm not an atheist. Why would I do that? You're not going to win people over by proving they're wrong.
Yeah.
You're going to win people over by loving them. And it goes back to, again, with the Crashdog and then different people who have believed that the way we're going to further our kingdom is through a political viewpoint, and it just doesn't work. And how you're going to change people is by loving them. And it's just way easier. It's human nature. It's way easier to shame people. It's way easier to tell people how they're wrong, how they don't have it right. And I'm such a screw up. 38 years after being a Christian, my spiritual flow chart looks like pretty lame. You know what I mean? I'm not the guy who's gonna be able to stand out and tell people how you're doing it wrong. I'm hopefully just gonna be telling people like I'm a screw up and Jesus still loves me.
Yeah.
And he can love you too. And I'm hoping I'm conveying that through my cartoons.
Well, sort of like you
feedback-
said too, like you say you pray to the one and only God. They're thinking that too. So in that sense, it's like just love them, like you said, for who they are.
Absolutely.
Because you don't want someone to badger you about their faith and try to change your mind.
Oh no, yeah, and again, it's one of the most powerful documentaries you will ever watch, and I have a defiance disorder, so the minute somebody tells me I have to watch something, I usually say no. But I would encourage any of the listeners here. One of the most powerful documentaries I ever watched was a documentary called, and again, changed my worldview, and affirmed some of my worldviews, and also challenged a lot of things. But oh man, now it's Inconvenient Hospitality. I can't remember. It's a documentary about a guy named musician named Daryl Davis, and he's black. He's a black musician, and he has convinced over 200 men to leave the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And one of the Grand Wizards actually gave him his robe, right? That
One
guy?
of his grand wizards is one of his best friends.
Yeah. Yep.
Stood up in his wedding. Was one of his best men at his wedding. Uh,
That's crazy.
the transformation that this guy has affected in these people's lives is staggering.
Mick,
And Daryl,
can we look that up and put a link to that for the listeners?
Oh yeah, totally.
Cool.
and I just want to say, when you watch it, it's gonna be troublesome, because you're seeing a black man hanging out with men in their outfits, Klans members. He goes to Klan rallies. These guys all will openly tell you that he's one of the finest people they've ever met.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get that with somebody who openly, their worldview is to say you're not even a human being? Well,
Right.
how he did it is he said, I showed these people love. I showed them kindness. Who's going to show kindness to a Ku Klux Klan member? I mean, but if you look at the life of Jesus Christ, as a young baby Christian, I was like, who would want to crucify such a nice person? I mean, Jesus talked about peace and love, but the more and more I study the scriptures, the more and more I go, that's probably why. There's this scene in the scriptures where Jesus is preaching to the Jews, and a centurion rolls up. Now, this is the equivalency of even worse. It's not even in America. We can't even wrap our mind around these stories, because we don't have the idea of what it's to be like a Jew in impressive Roman occupied Jerusalem. We just can't wrap our minds around this. But Jesus is preaching to this group of Jews, and a Roman centurion rolls up, who is the equivalency of like everything that's wrong in their lives, and asks Jesus to heal his servant. And Jesus turns to the crowd and says, I have not found faith like this guy's anywhere else in the Jews. How offensive would that be to the Jewish people? You know what I mean? Like, wait, this butthole, like this dude,
Yeah.
you're telling us we don't level up with his faith? So for me, that's one of the things where is like, if I want to meet people who make me feel uncomfortable. I want to meet people who feel like I wouldn't normally get a chance to I love crossing those cultural boundaries. I like surprising people. Another thing too that's kind of caused some contention with me and certain groups, and even at G's people, is that is that I am because I'm a hunter. I'm also I draw cartoons for a couple Second Amendment magazines.
Wait, why do people take problem with that you're a hunter?
Well, there's people in our community who aren't into guns.
Sure.
There's some people in our community who aren't really into hunting, and not that it's whatever. It's mildly tolerated. I'm kind of looked at a little bit like the less progressive Japuza, but because I also I believe in the Second Amendment,
But there's nothing wrong with hunting.
Yeah. No. Well, even like but also like, and so a couple years ago, crazy thing that happened, a crazy funny story. It's just one of those things that you just like. I can't orchestrate this stuff on my own. I just know this has to be the Lord doing these kind of things. But basically, I had drawn a cartoon for a Second Amendment magazine that got published on Facebook, and it was a local thing in Chicago, and there was people who were really digging it, and it was specifically designed for this cartoon was designed for a all black gun club in Chicago. It's people who are black in the black community who legally want to own. They have the right. They want the Constitution to work for them just as much as white people. And so I drew a cartoon for them. And there was this guy who took exception to a couple parts of the cartoon, and he was kind of dissecting it. And people were really irritated with him. And I looked at his criticisms, and I thought, you know what? He's actually right. So I messaged the guy and said, I appreciate your input. You're actually right. Well, come to find out, this guy is he's former military, former law enforcement, and he teaches carry and conceal courses on the south side of Chicago. And so a few years back, he was like, "Hey, you should cut." And him and I became friends because he realized, like, oh, Tim Davis isn't going to get butthurt over some criticism, and which is shocking in the world of Facebook today, And so him and I developed a friendship, and he said, "Hey, you should come down to my class and take my here's a 2-day course you take to get a permit to carry and conceal." And so I was like, "Sure." So I went down there, paid the fee, and I walked down. In Chicago, if you tell somebody a street address in Chicago, you know what neighborhood you're going into.
Yep.
And I knew walking into this place, I was going to be the only white guy in this course, and 77th Street and Ashland. And I said to my wife, "I know I'm going to be the only white guy," and it doesn't bother me at all. I love it. I love meeting new people. I love meeting people from all different backgrounds, groups, ethnicities, colors. I just don't know how they're going to feel about me being there. And I walked
Well,
to this class with 30
let's lay out a
people.
picture for the listeners of you, because they're not going to see the video. Spike has a gigantic, wonderful white beard.
Yeah, I mean, I look like a redneck Santa Claus, and if Santa Claus and Gimli the dwarf had a child together, it would be me. So they
Love it.
so I walk into this room, and of course, no one said anything to me, but I could feel a vibe of like, why is this guy here? And the instructor did not acknowledge my presence, because outside of just the fact that I was a student, because he's very professional, and he wasn't gonna be like, "Hey, Spike, how you doing?" He was just gonna be acting like everything was normal. And so within the first 10 minutes of us starting this class, one of the students raises their hands and says, "Hey, can we go around and introduce ourselves by name and say a little bio about ourselves? Because it's just kind of weird to be here for uh, 2 days and no one knows anything about each other." And the instructor said, "No, you can't do that. There's
Really?
people specifically getting jobs in security fields. They don't want their name out. This is not a meet and greet. This is you're getting a permit to carry a gun. If you want to be friends outside this group, that's fine. If somebody gives you their name, that's fine. But don't ask people. This isn't a social setting." And the instructor goes on to say, as a matter of fact, we've had people in we had a person in the U.S. Marshals in this class 3 months ago. I wasn't allowed to tell anyone he was a U.S. Marshal. I wasn't allowed to give out his name. He just blended in with the group. So you don't know who's in this classroom right now.
Yeah.
And everyone in that room looked over right at me. And I mean, they're all looking at me like, mm-hmm. And
who's this guy?
I raised my hand up, and I said, and the instructor calls him, "Yes, sir." I said, "I'd like to clarify with the entire class, I'm not a U.S. Marshal." And the entire place burst out laughing. I mean, obviously it was hilarious. So it kind of breaks that ice, Well, later on that day, we had to go to a gun range, and actually, you have to qualify with an actual live handgun to make sure, they're not going to just give you a permit. And over 3/4 of the class were women who had never held an actual firearm in their life. And I was put in a group with 4 other women who'd never done this before. And I've been shooting guns my entire life. And so I got up to the range, I shot my target, the required amount, and I was happy with the results. And they roll up your paper, and they had all 4 of us go, or 5 of us go into another room where they were going to score it. And we're waiting on the guy who's going to score our targets. And I could tell the women are really just really discouraged. And I said to them, I was like, "Well, how'd y'all do?" "Not good." I said, "Well, what happened?" And they said that they said that we didn't shoot real good. I said, "Well, is this your first time using a gun?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, don't be discouraged." I said, "Let's see your targets." So they should open up their targets. And I mean, there is bullets everywhere. I mean, it's a miracle they even hit the target. And so I said, "Well, don't be discouraged. It's your first time shooting a gun. Keep at it." Well, the one lady looks at me and says, "Well, let's see your target." So I enroll my target, and all my bullets are dead center. And the the lady looks at me right in the eyes and says, "Not a U.S. Marshal, my ass." And,
That's so good.
there's 4 ladies on the South Side to this day saying, you know, he said he wasn't a U.S. Marshal, but I know he was.
I was in a gun range class with a U.S. Marshal.
Oh, exactly. That guy looked like Santa Claus. And Kim was a dwarf, and he was a U.S. Marshal. But so yeah, just but again, it's able to connect. Like I would never have been able to orchestrate that. That all happened because of cartooning, because
organically too, yeah,
organically, and even back to like so even like with a thing like how my life journey goes is and oddly enough, and I was telling my wife about this last summer. So about 2-3 years ago, and I've always fished all my life, but in the last 3-4 years, I've just started really fishing our local harbor, just down the street from Jesus People. It's Montrose Harbor.
Oh, okay.
And it is my wife has been a little bit concerned because I'll be out there at 2-3 in the morning because when salmon's running in the fall, they're all night long. So, yeah, I'll be out there. I mean, there's shootings and there's stuff going on.
Pretty dangerous.
Yeah, but I'm meeting, connecting with people who I don't know if I have a sign over my head that says, "Hey, talk to this guy about Jesus." But literally, just be sitting there fishing randomly, and have some random guy walk up to me and just or woman, just start talking to me and asking me questions about my fishing, which then leads into like, "Hey, well, and I don't know. This last summer, I literally shared Jesus organically with more people with a rod in my hands than I ever had when I was handing out tracts.
Yeah.
That wasn't orchestrated. I didn't go down to the harbor going, I'm going to go down and I'm going to spread the word of Jesus Christ. I was going down there to catch a salmon. And you just connect with people. They feel like, hey, this guy's holding a fishing pole. I just want to talk to him. And I had so many people. I made a bunch of friends with some Muslim guys. I made some friends with some Pakistanis, and they felt one guy, this Muslim guy, and we've had several times we've gone fishing together, and he's asked me about my belief system. I've talked to him asked him about it because I don't really know a lot about the Muslim belief, other than what I've heard on crazy stuff on the news. So I was asking him questions, and we actually had a lot more in common and we had a lot more to connect on than we didn't. Mm-hmm. And so again, it's just one of those things where living out a lot of that stuff that I've always wanted to do, and God just keeps providing and putting stuff in front of me that I get a chance to do, and it's all organic. It's not something I wake up every day. Like I didn't wake up when they go, "Hey, honey, let's get a black child." There's this organic thing happened where a kid was really involved, and wanting to be a part of our lives, and I didn't wake up one day and go, "Hey, I want to be in magazines around, or I want to connect with rednecks in the South." Like that was never like it's like but I have some crazy relationships with people that I know has to be God. I mean, one of these guys I'm friends with down south, probably about 3 years ago, his wife wrote me a letter and said, "I've been praying for my husband for years that somebody would come into his life that would talk to him about Jesus. And we never thought it'd be a bearded guy from Chicago." And that you can't orchestrate that.
Great.
So and again, I'm just grateful. Like I was just looking at each day like, what's the Lord gonna have for this next year?
Yeah.
And
new year.
Yeah, and I'm always just grateful. Like again, like when people are interested in me from Crashdog, I always kind of chuckle and laugh because that was a part of my life that it was a purpose. It was nothing. I don't look back with any serious regrets from that. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful for the people that helped me do the things.
It still lives on too. It's great music that lives on still.
Yeah, and it's humbling for me because even recently I had a friend of mine who I've known for years, but she posted something on Facebook about, and I don't even know this thing, Spotify Rap or whatever it is.
Yep,
where
Spotify Rap. Yeah, all the Crashdog records are on Spotify, by the way.
Yeah, and so like here it is. She's like, "Oh, the second most listened to was Crashdog," and she told me later on. She goes, "And I was listening to you, because of course in the Crashdog realm, there's the Spike Crashdog and there's the Andrew Crashdog because they definitely changed sound."
Yes, there was 2 records with Andrew, right?
Yeah,
3 with you, 2 with Andrew.
Yeah, and the funniest thing with this, and your listeners will get a crack up about this. My wife says that, and she'll be present most of the times when this happens. Is I will without fail, somebody will come up to me at when we used to have the festival, or someone will come up to me at Jesus People. Sometimes it's been randomly on the street. Are you Spike from Crash Dog? Yep, yes I am. And it's weird that 30 years later, people are still coming to me and saying this, but they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, your music meant so much to me and touched my life, and I just want to thank you so much." I was like, "Oh, I appreciate it. Cool. I'm glad to hear that." They go, "I mean, Cassius, Fascist, and Other Fun Guy. It was the most amazing album." That's the album I wasn't on.
Yeah. Do you
And I
say
don't
that,
want
or
everyone
do you
to.
say that to him?
No, I don't ever say anything. No, I go,
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was really good. Like, I don't want to burst their bubble, but they don't realize
Yeah.
that's not and without fail. Like, it's like literally because again, by the time
Mick gets
I
that
left,
too, by the way.
I do.
Where they're like,
yeah, and
"Yeah, I was in Zayo," and they're like, "Blood and Fire,
Fire,
was the
yep.
was the album that changed my life." That's the one he left on.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you feel my pain, but they and of course, ultimately for me, if it's something that really was life changing for somebody, I really am happy for them. I don't have to be a part of that,
Right. But you were.
And
I mean, you created that band. You put it together. It was your baby. So in a way, even if you're not singing, it's still something that you put together and that lived on for 2 more records.
well, I appreciate you saying that. That means a lot because there are times, and with any person who's an artist, there's always those voices in the back of your head that are pretty loud, like "you suck." And I mean, even with my cartooning stuff, you're looking at this stuff every day, and you just think,
Yeah. Your own worst critic.
well, yeah, why am I doing this? I'm not really helping out people, and and then you'll get that email or that letter from somebody, or a message on Facebook about something that really touched somebody or really encouraged somebody. And
Do you take those well?
oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm very blessed, and I obviously I don't know what you mean by taking it well, but I
So
feel
sometimes like when if someone will say like, "Oh my gosh, I love this that you did," or whatever, I don't it's hard to it's hard to hear that sometimes.
sure.
Like it's hard to take it in and be like, "Is this sincere? Or are they just saying that because they're seeing me?" I don't know. And then, like you
Yeah,
said, you're your own worst critic. You're like, "Why do you
sure.
like why wouldn't you like something better?"
Sure, and there's a level of that where it's a fine line because I think I mean I've had enough people tell me right to my face that I suck big time. Like there was a prominent memory in my mind where I was playing a show at um, Portland. I was on tour with the last tour I was with Crash Dog, and the band Crux came out to support us,
Nice, yeah,
and great guys, and
great band.
me and Philip, the lead singer, were standing there, and this guy Philip he had a voice that was amazing, and just really. And this random dude comes walking up after the show and is like, "Dude, you can't sing worth crap." Like this guy just starts openly tearing into me, and
Jeez.
I'm literally laughing, thinking it's hilarious, genuinely thinking it's hilarious that you probably need some therapy if you think that's appropriate just to walk up to somebody and say that. Like that's really weird that you would say that out. Like, I feel worse for you than myself because
Yeah,
Right.
you probably aren't functioning well in society if you think that's normal.
Right.
Philip was ready to fight him. Philip wanted to fight him, and I was like, dude, don't waste your time on this guy. This is like
yeah.
this is clearly a maladjusted human being, and I don't know. Like, I don't. Like maybe the guy was just having a bad night. Just felt like you needed to leave and let me know how bad I sucked. But
Well, and you
um,
self-proclaim that you say you're not a
yeah,
musician, even though I would say you are, because singers are musicians, and you fronted that band and you put it together, and dude,
yeah.
that band is a great band, and it's bigger than a lot of bands that a lot of people have done.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story too. And there's these things where these things keep you humble, and I just always, they're more of laughing points for me than, like talking about people who like want to praise you and how it makes you uncomfortable. about like 8 years ago, I was in our dining room at G's People eating breakfast, and there was this young girl visiting our community. She was probably a 19-year-old girl. I'm sitting there eating my breakfast, and she's got a crucified shirt on. And I'm like, this girl wasn't even born when the Crucified were playing.
Yeah.
He wasn't probably even born when they broke up, but
Right.
it's kind of weird for me to see this 19-year-old girl wearing a Crucified shirt. So I say to her, like, I'm finishing up my breakfast, and I kind of yell to the next table, like, you like the Crucified? And because I just want to see if she actually knows who the Crucified are, or
Yeah,
did she
yeah.
get the shirt from a friend? And I was like, you like the Crucified? And she's like, oh, I love the Crucified. It's like, oh, cool. But you ever hear a Crashdog? And her response was, oh, my mom listens to that band. And
It's
I was like,
amazing.
wow. So I didn't
That's
tell her I was in the band, or I just was putting out a feeler on that, like. So
Well, her mom
but
probably
yeah,
listens to the Crucified too. Then.
yeah. So it was again another lesson in humility, but
That's funny. Hey, we are gonna close this out soon, but I remember you telling me this story, and I think I don't remember all of it, so I'd love to hear it again. But I know the listeners need to hear it. You were on a hunting show, right?
so yeah. Another
Can you
crazy. I
tell
was on
that
Animal
story?
Planet. Yeah, I was on Animal Planet. Another just crazy thing, and I'll finish out with this because my wife is giving me the signal something's going on. I got to go deal with something here, but they so another crazy thing with cartooning and just whatever, I was drawing cartoons for Hunting Magazine. I met a guy who's a professional hunter in Utah, and I went out and hunted with him one time, and he was a character. He's kind of this larger than life guy. He's like 6'2", big guy, deep booming voice, and we had a blast hunting together. And a couple years later, I had been studying a cartoonist called Saul Steinberg. He was a cartoonist from the New Yorker. And not only did Saul Sternberg make great cartoons, but he did these paper bag masks that just the minute you saw them, you're like, I got to now start making paper bag masks. And so I went and got some paper bags, and I made a couple masks. I made one of myself. I made one of my
Oh
wife.
yeah, I've seen those.
And then I decided to make one of my friend, the guy who I'd hunted with, Tom Austin, because he's got a big black beard, a big black unibrow, just kind of looks like a cartoon character. And so literally made these paper bag masks. And then 2 weeks later, I get a random phone call from him, from Tom Austin, saying, hey, Animal Planet's going to call you in 20 minutes. Don't screw it up. I was like, what? I'm in traffic in Chicago. And he's like, Animal Planet's going to call you in 20 minutes. Don't screw it up.
You're
So
in traffic.
like, sure enough, this guy calls me. He's like, 20 minutes later, he's like, I'm with the studio that's working on a show idea for Animal Planet, and we need to find somebody who's dumb enough and entertaining enough to go to a remote island in the middle of the Caribbean and hunt for wild pigs. And your friend Tom Austin, they were working on a gig, another separate gig with Tom Austin. They said, Tom Austin, put your name in the hat. And so I was like, okay. He says, well, tomorrow we're going to interview you in front of, we're going to do a Skype interview in front of all the Animal Planet executives. And we're gonna ask you a series of questions, and how you respond will determine whether you get picked for this job. They're interviewing people all over the country, and I'm thinking, when the minute he told me something, I've always been the last one picked for dodgeball. There ain't no, I know I ain't getting this gig. I'm just a random dude from Chicago. But the guy said this key thing. He says, well, hey, when you go to do the interview, be yourself, but be your big self. Be like
big yourself, you said?
Be your big self. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
He says, as a matter of fact, be like Tom Austin. That's what this interviewer said to me. Because Tom Austin was kind of a bigger in life character.
Yeah.
So when he said that, I thought, okay. So the next morning when we turned on the Skype interview, I had Tom Austin's mask on. And all these people were looking at me and they're like, is this Tim Davis? I was like, no, it's Tom Austin. And I was like, well, where's Tim Davis? I was like, well, he's in the next room killing someone with bare hands. And
Oh my
I go
goodness.
on for I go on for like 10 minutes in the interview is like why they should hire Tim Davis. But I'm talking like Tom
With
Austin.
your
Like,
mask
now
on
Tim
still for 10
Yeah,
minutes?
totally. Yeah, I'm like, I wake up every day wishing I was as good as Tim Davis. I mean, that man kills so much, and but just I'm going on, and finally, I said, "Well, I'll go get him," and I got up, walked off out of view, and I came back as myself and finished the interview. And these people were just looking at me like, "Oh my god!" And so then they're like, "We'll call you. We got to finish up all these interviews in a month. We'll get back to you and let you know." And I thought, "No, I'm never gonna get called back from these guys." And
Yeah.
a month later, they called me back and said, "You got the gig."
Wow.
And not only did you get the gig, but you're the only person they interviewed that had an entire room full of people from Animal Planet laughing their heads off.
That is amazing.
So, and then, yeah, 6 months later, I flew down to the Caribbeans and hunted on an island for 3.5 weeks, wild pigs, and met a bunch of crazy people and had a crazy time. And it aired on TV and was 45-minute blip in TV history. And, so many people I knew who had moved out of Jesus People to go out to California to try and make it big in the scene.
Mhm.
We're like, oh my God, this is going to be life changing, dude. This is going to rocket you into fame. Like, I've only had one or two people recognize me from an
Nice.
Animal Planet show.
Right.
One of my buddies, who was this random guy that I tow for, or that tows for us at GSP, was this guy from Bolivia. He's like 3 years after I did the gig, he's like, "Were you on TV?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I thought so." He's like, "I was watching TV last night, and I said to my wife, I know that big red nose." And big red nose. Like, what the dude? I got feelings, bro.
I got
And
feelings.
so yeah, again, like if I'd have written my life story at 16 when I left home to move to Chicago,
Never
would have been
thought.
as interesting as never would have thought the life I'm living right now.
That's great, man. That's great.
And I can't wait for the next 10, 20 years what's going to happen. But again, main focus for me is waking up every day and asking the Lord just to be a master of the day and help me be available to know what he needs me to do.
Well, I appreciate your stories. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
When I told Mick you were coming on, he was ecstatic.
Awesome. Yeah.
Love you, brother. Keep up
Love
the good
you.
work. And tell Amy I said hi. And
Yeah, we'll do.
we're going to drop Boy's Life by Crashdog to send us out. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, if you don't mind, you want to put a link on the Red Jaw cartoons, Amazon.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
In case anyone wants to buy my book there, it's available on Amazon. So
Absolutely. Will you also send us some photos of one now and maybe when you were in Crashdog for some promo stuff?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Guys, thanks so much.
Appreciate
No
it.
problem.
It's a boy's life. It's a boy's There's no laws in this place. Anything goes. It's Thunderdome.
Hey, what's up? Wiley here. Hey, we have a treat for the listeners. A band called Take. Yes, I got it confused with the band The Take from New York City, the Oi hardcore band. But man, so I was super confused when they sent me a Creed cover. I thought, that's interesting for The Take. This is a different band. This is Take. They've been around for 20 years. They are not from New York City, and they are just as amazing as The Take from New York City. So we're going to play you the Creed song cover that they did, which is going to blow your mind. But first, I want to show you a little taste of what they actually normally sound like, okay? So this is Take with the song Power Trip. We're going to do a little clip right here.
John from the band Take, based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. For some reason, this podcast thinks we're based out of New York. I think they think we're a different band. But anyway, check out our brand new single from one of the greatest bands of all time, Creed. This is the song What If. You are listening to Coffee and Hardcore.
say yes.
It was good to have Spike on and have him talk, and you got to share. Dude, he has a lot of great stories.
He does. That's the thing, is he's a storyteller, and that's why he actually said, I don't know if nervous was the word, but something like, I hope that I can deliver. And I said, Spike, you're like one of the best storytellers I've ever met, ever. I'm pretty sure you can deliver, because I've been to his garage before, and it's basically behind my shop.
Oh, wow.
And he'll just tell the most amazing stories that you've ever heard. He's gifted with storytelling.
Yeah. Just a good, genuine guy too. Like,
Great.
really good, genuine guy. So I don't know, the when he was telling the story about like different things that he has done and you know, his faith and everything, you're like, yeah, I mean, sometimes I mean, we've shared our stories some, and so sometimes that kind of stuff can get a little, you know, you hear the same thing, you know, it gets annoying. But with him, he's just so genuine and loving and caring, and just wants to just hang with people and all that. It's like, this guy's real. He's not putting on some show. He's not doing anything. That's who he really is, and that's what made it such a good conversation to me.
Yeah, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I thought about you instantly when he started talking about his faith in 2005 when he started cartooning, and he started questioning his faith. So basically he was deconstructing, not his religion part of it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you wrote a book about deconstructing, which I have.
Well, yeah.
And did that hit home with you at all?
Yeah.
I didn't know how comfortable you'd be about bringing it up in the actual talk with him. So I said, I mental noted to talk to you about it after.
Yeah. It did. And not that, you know, different, maybe a little different outcome for me than Spike, but in a lot of ways, seeing the split off from, you know, when he was saying things like, so I was told this and it's wrong. What else is wrong? You know, and you know, going down that same path. But I mean, where I wouldn't say certain things like he would, I still agree with him. You know, I thought it was such a beautiful statement when he was talking about his friend that he had met who was Native American, and he told the story about her praying for him, and you know, going through all the detail and stuff, and basically he was like, wow, her prayer life's
Yeah.
I'm this professing Christian and her prayer life's greater than mine. I thought, you know, so I don't know, I like, there's a lot of things that we see eye to eye on, like, you know, so it hit home a little bit, and I don't know, that's not, I see, that's just I don't have labels anymore, so yeah, I just can't.
Speaking of not having labels anymore, I recently dropped one.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I'm not, I mean, we're in a straight edge band or whatever. It's barely a straight edge band. We just all don't drink, and there's X's in our names.
Right. We're just old.
Yeah, we're just old. But you know about it. And I was debating if I should talk about it, but we talked about it so much on the podcast. It's just come up because we talk about our lives on the podcast.
Right.
But old man Wiley has broke veg.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that, but I didn't want to ask you on there. But now that you brought it up, I'm going to ask you. So how did that happen? Or what was the process in that? You don't have to go into great detail if you don't want to. And then also, like, how do you feel now?
Okay. It's interesting, right? So it has been such a huge part of my life for a very long time. Almost to the point where it just, almost like straight edge, like not drinking. Like, I've been straight edge 9 years. I know you have been your whole life, but after a while, you just live your life. You don't think about it, right?
Right.
So that's the case with being vegan. Like, I didn't. And let me rephrase too. I guess I wouldn't even say that I was really vegan because I ate eggs, right? So we'll say vegetarian. Even though pretty much vegan. No dairy, no meat.
Right.
Anyways, so we'll say vegetarian. So basically went my years and years and years and years not eating meat. So it just becomes, you don't think about it anymore. It's not a big deal. But I started get my hands and my feet, like my fingertips and my toes started getting numb. And I was like, well, this isn't good. This isn't good. I did a little research, looked it up, and it said it could be an iron deficiency. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes. So it started getting worse. And my uncle picked me up in Chicago on the way to Ann Arbor because we went to the Michigan versus Peru game.
Yeah.
And all the way in his car, pretty much like 20 minutes, my whole hands started, I couldn't feel them. And it started moving, like the numbness started moving from my feet to my ankles. And I was kind of I was kind of like, I don't know, I'm kind of freaking out. I might need to go to the hospital. Like, I don't think this is good. And it lasted for like the, 3-hour drive or whatever, 2.5-hour drive. And so we get to Ann Arbor. All my uncles are around the table because you saw that picture. We basically like reenacted the photo from 1997 when we went to the Michigan game, and we were all there and we all retook the photo. Well, my uncle Mark, he lives in Tennessee, I think, Tennessee now. And he's like a sports, what do you call those people that, the health side of it, like the,
like it's sport,
like, when you get hurt or when you
yeah.
Not a chiropractor, but like some sort of like that, like a
therapist.
Sure. Yeah.
Sports therapist. Yeah.
Yep. And I explained to him all, what was going on with me and everything. And he's like, are you diabetic? And I was like, well, I mean, no, not to my knowledge. But I do have high cholesterol and blood pressure running my family. Everyone in my family's there. So they were like, yeah. But he's like, do you get enough iron? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, are you vegan or vegetarian? I was like, yes. And he said, yeah, that's a huge thing that can happen to vegans or vegetarians. They don't get the right kind or enough iron. And sometimes it can lead to type 1 diabetes. So you got to be really careful. So I was like, oh shit. So I was going to go get some blood work done. And I'm like, you know what? First, I'm going to try to take some iron pills. And I take the 40 plus pills, but I was like, I'm going to take some iron pills. So I took iron pills. I gave it a week, actually a little more than a week, like 10 or 11 days. It helped a little bit. Like it was going away a little bit. And my Uncle Mark said, if you like, salmon is huge. It's really good for that. So I was like, you know what? My health isn't worth any sort of label or anything like that,
Right.
I'm sure I could have went and got like shots or anything, I was talking to Jacob and he's like, you can go get B12 shots or whatever from your doctor. And it's like, dude, I don't got time to do that. Like,
right.
For me to eat salmon's a little bit easier. And so I did. And I try to eat fish like 3 times a day, 3 times a week. 3 times a day. Now I have mercury poisoning.
Yeah.
I sent you a picture of sardines and said, look who's breaking veg.
Right.
So to me, it's just not worth it.
Right.
I don't give a shit like what anyone says, what they want to say about it. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm all for people being vegan, and I think it can make a better world. I know it can, but sorry, my health's not worth it. I got a child now I got to think about.
Yeah, I was gonna say a kid in your life changes a lot of things.
Yeah, and I mean, when your hands and feet get numb and it starts to get worse, it was a little scary.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's your brain starts going to all these other places. Like,
yes,
the normal thing when your hand goes numb or your side goes numb or whatever is like, oh God, there's something wrong with my heart. Like, because that's like the big thing. So, oh yeah, man.
Well, and it was, I was looking at almost 2 weeks like that.
Yeah,
And so I was
scary.
gonna go get blood, and I was like, you know what, I want to try this first, and then I'll.
Right.
And so I think it's been since the game. So what I think like 2 months now.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Is that called is that a pescatarian? Basically a vegetarian who eats fish. Is that what that's called? Or am I completely way out there?
I think it is.
Something like that. There's a special name for it. I knew that.
Yeah, it's a pescatarian, yeah.
But
we're not putting those. We don't care about those.
Well, you don't care about those labels, right? But no, I know you well enough to know that you're when it comes to things like that, you always are mindful of what you eat and your health.
Yes.
So to me, it's like I know that you're not, and you might not have one of these in Chicago, but you're not like going, oh, I need to eat fish, so I'm going to go to Long John Silver's or Captain D's and eat a bunch of fried fish. You're getting salmon, so you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, what would be the point of?
Right. I'm gonna go eat some fried fish from Hardee's.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah, so that was hard for me, but like,
yeah,
it wasn't. It was because of like everything we talk about and we stand for and all this stuff. But again, when it comes down to it, my family, my health, and that's my number one. I gotta think about.
Right.
And I was never the kind of it would have been brutal if I was the kind of person that pushed my stuff on other. Like I never gave you shit for eating meat.
Right.
I don't care about what other people do.
Right.
So, and that's the thing. Like in the Spike, that might confuse people because in the Spike chat, he's talking about hunting, and I said, why would people give you crap for hunting? There's nothing wrong with hunting. And I even stood on that when I was a vegan. Like, I think if you go out and you hunt and you kill an animal, and you actually eat it and you use it to feed your family and you're using it for the right reasons, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Right. I grew up in the UP shooting guns and all my family hunting.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's responsibility, and that's what you hear when you hear Spike and what all that he talked about. You just hear someone who's responsible.
Yeah.
Not some.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super into hunting. I was more when I was younger. But who cares? That's what brings him joy.
Right.
Like, who am I to even be like, oh, I can't believe people would even say that to him. Like, just let people,
I know.
Like his message, let people just be people.
Right.
Back up.
Yeah.
Just take a second and think about it. Like,
yeah. I'm like, I live in West Virginia.
Yeah. It's common.
It's like,
right?
it's like the UP.
Yeah.
Like when I was in high school, you could still drive to school in your truck with a shotgun rack. I mean, that was still a thing. That was a different world then, but still, that's what Isn't
it crazy what 30 or 40 years can do?
I know. Like, I'm thinking about when I was my daughter's age, I was riding around in a Volkswagen Beetle turned into a dune buggy with a 22.
Interesting.
Driving back roads with my friend and shooting trees and other stuff while we're driving down the road. Yeah. I cannot imagine my son, my daughter doing anything like that. Yeah. And then, my daughter has a cell phone and I know where she's at all times, wherever she goes. When I was a kid, there was no cell phones and it wasn't like I didn't drive anywhere, but I'd walk through the woods to get whatever. It's like so weird and different. And it's hard to even.
It is. So I don't know. So you're more of like in the country, right?
Yeah.
So
when I was younger, and even I can say I live in a city now, but I don't. Yeah, it's still rural. It's a very small city.
Yeah. Because I know when I was a kid, we would be paintballing in the fields, we'd be shooting guns or playing football or basketball at wintertime, always hockey. So we were always outside playing sports. Always.
Yeah.
So kids don't especially in the city, don't get to do that as much.
No, there's not as many opportunities, and it's just like I said, it's just a different time,
Different world, y'all.
different world. And I don't want to be one of those old fogies that's like, well, back in my day. I don't want to be like that.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of things now that I'm very thankful for that is different than when I was a kid. I'm very grateful for that. But there's some things that I wish there was the possibility of it being like that. So yeah.
Well, so I know when I came to Japuza, I visited in 99 and moved there in 2000. And I remember when I moved there. So 2000, people don't really have cell phones, right? Especially like, you know, poor punk rock kids like us, right?
Right. Yeah.
And internet's you're not streaming movies back then.
Right.
It was nuts. So you'd go down into the I guess you call it like a waiting area. Yeah. And all the like single people, kids would be hanging out, and people would be skateboarding on like in Japuza, and people would be listening to music, you know, with their Walkmans or whatever. And people would be watching movies at the front desk. And then we would always pool money together. Like everyone would get like $2 or $3. And so we'd get up to like $300 to have this dude sit in the grease trap in his underwear. And we were like, we'll give you $300 to sit in this grease trap in your underwear. We're doing stuff like that, you know, like all this crazy stuff. We used to get donations at Japuza, and you get donations of like stacks and stacks of Oreos. And so youth groups would come and visit, and they would stay in the back building, and we would just grab backpacks full of Oreos, and we would have Oreo fights with the kids that lived at Japuza and then the youth groups that were visiting. And it was epic. Like we were just pelting each other with Oreos, and all these cars and buildings were getting hit with Oreos. Like it was amazing. We were doing stuff like that, right? Anytime we wanted to watch a movie, we would have to go into someone's room, and we would all be watching a movie together. Like, what movie did you get? You know, what DVD or VHS did you get? Like, oh, you got this from the thrift store. Let's watch it. So we'd all watch it, you know. Fast forward, I come back to Chicago, 2012, 2013, 12? Is that 9 years ago? I don't even know anymore. 10 years ago? 2012. And it's like completely different. No one's hanging out. Everyone's in their room. It was weird. It's like a ghost town when you go in there. And I'm like, where does everyone hang out? They're like, oh, everyone just hangs out in their own room and plays video games or streams movies. It was just weird. Yeah. And that's like one thing that I wish never changed, because people born now aren't really going to know that enjoyment of hanging out and bonding with people like that. Right. I don't know, it was just strange. It was completely like two different times. Yeah.
And this is something that I've learned, like watching my daughter, is she has a group of friends, and they live in different parts of the city, so they're not neighbors. You know what I'm saying? They're like, they can't go outside and play. Yeah. But what they do is they all get in one group and they hang out. And there was a part of me that's like, oh, well, that's not cool. They're doing it this way. But then when I hear them laughing and giggling and goofing off, I'm like, well, that's what I sounded like. And it's different, but yet.
Back up. So they're on the internet doing it?
Yeah. Yeah, they're on the internet doing it. Okay. They're on FaceTime, or they're on.
So kind of like what we're doing.
Yeah, basically. But it's because
so that is a cool thing.
That is a cool thing
in that way.
It's connected in that way. But like you said, if you just separate and you're just like not doing anything with anybody, that's there's good and bad to it.
Sure, so. And I think some of those people are probably hanging out with other people via internet, but they're missing out on what's in front of them too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Both good points.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we jabbered a lot.
We did. It was like a little philosophy moment there at the end.
Yeah. One thing I did want to throw out before we go, and hopefully the listeners can either have stopped by now this conversation, click pause out of here, 3 stars, or they were keeping their attention somehow. But My son now looks like a hockey player.
Yes.
Yes, cracked a tooth. Running full force on the cement, and he usually catches himself. This time he was restricted with his gloves and his coat that he had on, and he caught it with his face.
Oh man.
So we've been to 2 dentists in 2 days. Yesterday we went, and then today we went to like a kid specialist dentist, and he doesn't even like his teeth being brushed. Like us brushing his teeth is painful. But they took x-rays as well as they could, and it split like down the center, not center, almost, it's like almost half gone, right? We were hoping it, like, wished it would have chipped the bottom off, but it's like and so by the x-rays they aren't sure if the nerve is exposed. They said if it is, it's barely exposed, but if it is, it'll probably have to be pulled.
Okay.
Because it'll get worse. So we're gonna give it 2 weeks to see how he does.
Yeah, see how he does.
He might look like an Alex Ovechkin or a Bertuzzi in 2 weeks. We'll see. But he looks awesome now.
You know, but
cracked tooth.
They're just baby teeth. He'll get the other ones.
Yeah, but I mean, not for it's gonna be like 5 or 6 years before he gets it.
No, we're gonna hope that it everything corrects itself. Teeth are weird, man, especially when they're baby teeth.
Yeah.
Like my nephew cracked both front bad, and
really? How old?
Yeah, and they like, he wasn't as young as Otto, but he was young, and they just kind of grew back together.
Oh yeah,
it's weird. Yeah, it's weird how that works.
I don't know if he probably chipped the bottoms off, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
he chipped like
he did it this way.
Yeah, diagonally. Yeah. So, vertically. So yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So we don't know what's going on. We got to wait it out because he like busted up his lip too, and then his teeth were spaced anyways. Like he has David Letterman teeth anyways. So like the little part in your mouth that's in between your teeth, that little ball, you know, it's back there, like was bleeding a lot too. So the dentist wasn't sure if like that was causing him pain or if touching the tooth was causing him pain.
Right.
So we gotta wait it out, and it kind of sucks because
I
think he looks awesome with the chipped tooth. I really don't want to see him pull it. They don't have to, because they gotta like go in there and stick needles in his gums and
that
put him under, and
not gonna be fun for a little guy.
No, we don't want that to happen.
No.
But that's all my jibber jabbering.
All right. Well, hey, listen, season 5, episode 1 is over with. Thank you guys for hanging with us. Please, if you can, share this episode, like us. If you need best place to get a hold of us, if you're a band wanting to send in your stuff for us to look at, if you're a hardcore band, punk band, best place to do this through Instagram. And stay tuned for some other things that we got planned for this year as far as like the Patreon and all that goes. We'll be put out some information about that hopefully this month.
Yeah, we might be having a non-hardcore guest on
the
show.
Ooh.
Maybe next, maybe coming up soon.
Yes.
Yeah. So but it's someone who inspired me also greatly growing up. Yeah.
But also but at the same time has
their hands in hardcore.
Yes. Yeah. He's Kevin Bacon-esque.
Yeah.
So many shades to get to him. Not far.
So many shades. Not so many shades. So many
Not
shades.
so many. So what? Somewhere in there.
All right. I'm sure everyone's had it. This is probably gonna be a long episode too.
Yeah.
But you only got one in December, so
that's right.
So you can act like this is the second one in December, and then whatever. Yeah. All right, take us out of here with that outro skull crack track.
All righty.
Coffee and hardcore laid off, yeah, coffee, caught you a delicious bass.